So today I'm going to talk about the books I read in February and the books I read in March. In February, I decided I wanted to read graphic novels. And I had never read a graphic novel before, so I wanted to get recommendations to make sure that my first experience with graphic novels was a good one. So the first place I went to was on Storygraph, which is an app that I've been using to track my reading. Jack Edwards, who is also a YouTuber around books. I went on his profile to see if he had read any graphic novels and if he had anything that he gave top marks to. And so one of the books I found from him is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. Charlie Mackesy both wrote the book and illustrated it, and the illustrations are just so pretty. They're all kind of sketch-like with not a lot of color, mostly black, but they're beautiful. It looks like it's beautiful. So when I started reading this, in the beginning there is a kind of like a letter to the reader about what the author hopes you get from the book. And one of the things he says is that he hopes that you're able to pick up this book and open it to any page and enjoy it. And when I read that, I was a little bit like, well, isn't this a novel? And then I began reading it and realized that he was right. You could do that with this book. So my interpretation of what's happening in the book is this boy is going on a journey home. And along the journey, he meets the mole, the fox, and the horse. And we are given tiny snippets of this journey. And in these tiny snippets, we see this boy asking a question about life. And then either the fox, the mole, or the horse answers that question. And that's it. Every page is a new question and a new answer. And so with these new questions and answers, it's kind of like reading really good advice for life, if that makes sense. So I just opened it to a random page the way the author suggested, and it's often the hardest person to forgive is yourself. That wasn't even a question. That was just a statement by the mole. And you can do that with any page. Just like he said, you can open it and see some piece of advice given to you. When you begin reading this, because the illustrations are so gorgeous and because you're reading uplifting sayings, I don't know the right terminology for what it is, but you can almost, or at least I almost started playing a soundtrack in my head, and I felt like this was sort of like reading music. That's the best way I can describe it. It was very good. I gave it 4.5 stars. This would make an incredible book to give a high school graduate, to give a college graduate, or a new parent. It's really good. It's very sweet, easy to read. I read it 15 minutes, probably tops, but it's very nice. I recommend this as well. The second book that I read in February was The Prince and the Dressmaker. So the reason I read this book is I was watching another YouTube video, and she was talking about ways to get out of a slump. Like if you're in a reading slump. And I'll link her video below. It was very good. But she breaks it up into different genres that you might want to read to kind of kick yourself back into the habit of reading. And one of her categories was graphic novel. And she talked about The Prince and the Dressmaker. But it's written by Jen Wang, and she's also the illustrator in it. And the way she does illustrations is on every page, you can see that she's just paying such great detail what colors she's using. They all are complementary. This is about the prince who likes to wear dresses, and the dressmaker who makes dresses. So there's the boy who wears dresses. Obviously, what does that mean as a prince, as a boy, as somebody who's supposed to inherit a kingdom, which, is supposed to be manly and strong. But then there's also the dressmaker. And what does it mean to be a woman who has to hide because of something that a man wants. And both of these subjects are just dealt with so sweetly and incredibly kind. I love the ending of this book. It's gentle and sweet, and it's just a really good book. You should read it. The next book that I read is Persepolis. I also got this from the same YouTuber as this book. So Persepolis is written by Marjane Satrapi. And this is a memoir of her growing up during the Islamic Revolution. And is the story of her as a 10-year-old, where her country is changing in incredibly dramatic and deadly ways. And what does that life look like to a 10-year-old? Obviously, that's going to look very different than it does to an adult. And it's told through the 10-year-old's eyes, her eyes as a 10-year-old. So she's writing kind of like in the way she's hearing it. So she's hearing this story of the revolution and her history around it through her parents and through her other relatives and also through children, her peers, who are telling her their stories of that they're hearing from their parents. So when you're reading it, you're looking at this whole situation through the eyes of a 10-year-old, which is incredibly moving, also incredibly funny. Her talking about her relationship to God in this is just, it's so funny. But it's a great book, incredibly moving. To have humor in such a powerful subject is an art in and of itself. It's very good. I highly recommend Persepolis. So when I was researching to see what books I wanted to read, I had looked up a whole bunch of different lists. Best graphic novels of all time. You have to read this graphic novel. And I saw this on the list over and over again. And it was absolutely, it belonged on those lists. Another one that I saw on the lists all the time was this one, which is Fun Home by Alison Bechdel. So I knew of Alison Bechdel from something called the Bechdel test. And the Bechdel test is, it's a test for movies. Does a movie have two female characters? And do these two female characters talk to one another? And are they talking about something other than a guy? And you would be surprised how many movies fail that test. It seems very simple. Unfortunately, it's not. So that's how I knew of Alison Bechdel. And I also knew that she did graphic novels, but because I had never read one, I didn't know much about her in that regard. And when I was looking at the lists of must-read, best of all times, this kept coming up over and over again as well. And holy crap, it absolutely deserves to be on that list. This is such a good book. She talks about, in this book, her relationship to her father and where there lies similarities between the two of them and where very dissimilar things lie. And something I found very interesting is where the dissimilarities lie, it's in how each of them deals with their similarities. And the way she tells the story is she talks about a period of her life when she was younger and then a period of her life when she was in college. And she bounces back and forth between these two time periods. And when she bounces back to this time period, she tells a different view of that same time period. And because she does this, you begin to understand the complexity of the subject matter that she was dealing with when she was a child. Even as an adult, she didn't realize how complex it was until she looked back on it. It's illustrated by Alison Bechdel, and it's her story. It's all in black and white. And it's a beautiful story. I have never had to look up more words in reading a book than I had to look up in this book. Her vocabulary is extensive. Far more extensive than mine is in describing this book, but holy crap, this was great. It was so good. And the last book I read in February was Kari. I pronounce it Kari, maybe it was Kari, I'm not sure, but it's by Amruta Patil, and she is also the illustrator. This is fiction. This isn't her, like, it's her story, but she wrote it, but it's fiction. It's incredible. This book is so good. This book is sort of like reading poetry. It's incredibly lyrical. I don't know how to explain it, but other than when you read this book, you feel like you're reading a poem, but you're not. And the illustration is a lot of black and white with pops of this color. So she'll have different panels that have a color, like obviously red is highlighted here. Also in this book, there's a lot of narration. So there's her telling you the story. This is about this girl Kari and her dealing with her loss of someone that she loved very much. And it was because she moved away. It's not only her dealing with the loss of this person that she loved, but also dealing with herself and who she is and who she is within the people that she surrounds herself with. It's an incredible book. I gave this 5 stars. 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 So this was a 5-star month. February was easily a 5-star month. And they're all wonderful for just different reasons. They're all very good books. So at the end of February, after I had read Kari, I started reading another graphic novel, and then I lost the book. I couldn't find it. I set it down somewhere. I don't know where I set it. And it kind of sent me into a phase of kind of a funk. I wasn't reading. So I didn't read almost all of March. Until one day, Matt and I, we had to waste some time, so we ended up going to Target. And we were walking through the book section. And while we were walking through the book section, I saw all these different books that I had seen on different YouTube channels. And so I started getting books, and one of them was this one, They Both Die at the End. When I was in the line to buy the books, I opened this one up just to see, because this has the feel. I love books that feel like this. This type of book that just opens like this feels inviting to me. It feels like I want to read it. It feels like I want to snuggle up with it. I don't know. Maybe I'm a weirdo. It also smells really good. So anyway, so when I was in line, I opened it up just to see what it looked like before you even get to the title page. It says, "Hello, I'm calling from Deathcast. I regret to inform you that sometime in the next 24 hours, you'll be meeting an untimely death. On behalf of everyone at Deathcast, we're sorry to lose you. Live this day to your fullest, okay?" That's before you even get to the title page. And so I started reading in line at Target, and I couldn't put it down. I had this book in my hand all the time. If I had any moment during the day, I was reading the book. It's a very easy read. Easy in the words, not necessarily in content. So it's 2 boys who get the Deathcast call, and it's how they live their last day. And boy, do you fall in love with these characters. So there's certain books that when I'm done reading it, I'll think later, oh, I wonder how they're doing. I wonder what's happening here. And I'm doing that with this book. Well, they're not doing anything because they're characters in a book. That's how vivid all of the characters in this book are. It's so well written. The secondary characters, you like them, you know who they are. Because this is told over a 24-hour period, there's 300 pages to get to know each of the main characters, to get to know each of the secondary characters, and you know them so well by the end of the book that they're your friends. They're the people that you know. They're the people that you care about. It's a well-written book. I really enjoyed this book. I highly recommend it. 5 stars. Even though I got into a funk where I didn't read for like 20 days, this book made getting back into it well worth it. This is a great book. Highly recommend it. 5 stars. This has been a 5-star reading extravaganza. That's it. That's all I have to say. Those are the books I read. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to read in April, but I guess stay tuned to find out. Bye.